Thank you. But correct the name. The last name is M-A-R-S-E.
What I'd like to do in the next 25 minutes or so is to spend a little time talking about ministry to the homebound. Don't know about your parish, but my parish of St. Matthias has, fair to say, an older population who are increasingly in need of someone bringing communion to them. And so we are working very diligently as to try and expand the number of our ministers to the homebound. Someone was talking to me at the break about, somebody would like communion every day. Well, we flat out say that's just not possible with all the demand. So unless somebody who is, a good friend and is dedicated to do that, it's getting harder and harder for us as our population of folks who are in need. One of our older deacons at our parish had a knee replacement surgery a month or so ago, and I was his minister to him. And it's a wonderful ministry because you develop with people, you can develop a relationship, and it also is exactly what Christ calls us to do. So I wanted to start with Scripture a little bit, that the foundation of our ministry in this area in particular of taking food to our nourishment, our spiritual nourishment, to our brothers and sisters who would very much like to come to Mass but can't, is really an extension of the community. At the end of Mass, what are the last words said? What we call the dismissal. What are the last words said? If there's a deacon, it's said by the deacon, but if there isn't, it's said by the priest. What are the last words that are said?
Go in peace.
Go in peace. Go forth. There's several different phrases that we can use, all of which the message is to take the gospel with you. Take the word, take the Eucharist that you've been nourished by, and let you live your faith out there. If all we do is gather once a week and hear the word and consume and all of that and go out the door and continue to do what we always do in somewhat of a self-serving fashion, we've missed the point. It really is go forth. And so ministers of the homebound truly exemplify the gospel because they are extensions of the community. And here's what I would caution you to do. Just as I talked a little bit about when you're a minister during Mass, you are serving the community and how to think about that role. How to think about the role as minister to the homebound is thinking this, that you are not going alone. The community is going with you. You've been sent from the community. You come from the community. So such things as saying to an individual that you're visiting, the community is praying for you. Blah, 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 blah has asked about you. Father sends you best wishes. Here's a copy of our bulletin. And by the way, this is coming up, and maybe we can get you there. And that you're a part of the community that you come from. You are taking Our Lady of Mercy with you. And so that's part of the message of care and comfort. But there's scriptural basis of what we do. I want to read this little excerpt from Luke's Gospel, and I want to ask you, what does this have to do with homebound ministry? The day was drawing to a close, and the 12 came to him and said, "Send the crowd away, so that they may go into the surrounding villages and countryside to lodge and get provisions, for we are here in a deserted place." But Jesus said to them, "You give them something to eat." And they said, "We have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish, unless we're to go and buy food for all these people." for there were about 5,000 men. And he said to his disciples, "Make them sit down in groups of about 50. And they did so, and made them all sit down. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke them and gave them to the disciples to set before the crowd. And all ate and were filled. What was left over was gathered up, 12 baskets of broken pieces." What does that have to do with homebound ministry? What is the message in that gospel passage about what we do?
I think that there's no shortage.
Yeah.
That God's love, everything that God has planned for us is in abundance.
Right.
And just because you can't make it to church or you can't make the normal ceremonies that Catholics do, doesn't make you any less of a Catholic or doesn't make God's love for you any less. It's never ending.
In fact, maybe even God reaches out even farther. Because what happens at the beginning of that scripture reading, what do disciples want to do? Send them away. Send them away. Oh, they're not here? They're not here at Mass? Send them away. And Jesus turns and says, no. Have them sit down. Let's look at what we have. Break it, go, faith. No. And extending that beyond what seems obvious. We don't have enough food. That's not a good enough answer for God. Okay, let me do one more. And then you can tell me what this has to do with it. Here it is. When he entered Capernaum, the centurion came to him, appealing to him and saying, "Lord, my servant is lying at home paralyzed in terrible distress." And he said to him, "I will come and cure him." The centurion answered, "Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only speak the word and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to one, 'Go,' and he goes. And to another, 'Come,' and he comes. And to my slave, 'Do this,' and the slave does it." And when Jesus heard him, he was amazed and said to those who followed him, "Truly I tell you, in no one in Israel have I found such faith. I tell you, many will come from the east and the west and will eat with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, while the heirs of the kingdom will be thrown into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." And to the centurion, Jesus said, "Go, let it be done for you according to your faith." And the servant was healed in that hour. What does that have to do with what we do? Lord, I am not worthy. Does that ring a bell? You heard that one before? Where do you hear it? Every Mass, okay? I am not worthy, but it's faith that's at the core of what we do in ministry. And Jesus' point about this centurion, this pagan, this worshiper of the many gods of Rome, had more faith at that moment than all those standing around him who said they were filled with faith. So when we go and we serve and we go to someone, it's because we are bringing that nurturing food, that communion, to those who can't come, to the centurion slave who lies there, to all those who are out of sight, but not out of the mind of our community. And so our service in that manner is, to make my point again, an extension of our greater community and an amazing ministry. Because each one of those visits, while the ministry in Mass can sometimes get routine, each one of those visits are not. They're really special for that person or in that facility or in that hospital or wherever you may go. So I just wanted to point out the scriptural importance of what we do. I'm a teacher, right? I told you that. So I have a test for you. And I want you to tell me if what I read is an appropriate practice when you're going to visit a homebound person, or an inappropriate one. Okay? This is really good, and the majority wins. And there are prizes? No, there aren't. But I promise you, the Mike will provide. No, I do that to him all the time. Hey, gift certificate for a condominium in Hawaii. No, okay. All right, here we go. If you're a homebound minister, is this an appropriate practice? Begin the prayer with the sign of the cross, the sign common to all prayers. Yes. Okay, that's the easy one. Okay. Number 2, comment on how the house needs to be better organized for the sick person. Yeah, well, we'd like to do that. Rearrange furniture, please. Can you move this over here and, just, wow, what a dump. No, just kind of thing. So, have to be, that's not why you're there. No interior decorating. So, but, okay, comments like you've been, and these are meant to be sort of exaggeration, but it's the point being, what's your role? What's your purpose? Number 3, talk about the last visit to another house and comment about its cleanliness. No. Or not even talk about your last visit, because one of the sort of underwritten assumptions is that what we're doing is between you and I. And so we're sharing this moment together, and I'm going to assume you're not going to go to the next house and tell me what the last person talked about the whole time, that kind of thing. So there's a level of confidentiality, or at least discreetness, in what we do. Number 4, be aware of the sick person's ability to follow the prayers and the ritual. Yes. Yeah, that's a good practice. How does that manifest itself? What do I mean when I say the person's ability to follow the prayers?
They're conscious.
They're conscious, yeah. They could be under medication that causes them to nod off every now and then. That's a good one. Yes. Okay. Other things.
They might be exhibiting signs of dementia. They're confused.
Very good. Okay. So as much as they're trying, they're not all able to track what you're saying or doing. So you modify what you're doing. Instead of perhaps going through all the readings of the day, maybe one reading. Or maybe right to the Our Father. So you have to make these judgments. We'll lay out the ritual for you, the rite for you, R-I-T-E. But you're going to have to make those decisions based upon the situation. We're going to make this pretty brief. To the extent that we can talk a little bit about that gospel reading and what it means to you, what it means to me, and having those cues. Okay, number 5, comment on the lack of interest of the parish priest in visiting the homebound. No, not a good idea. So you are a minister of the parish, so editorial comments aside, that's not why you're there. Number 6, show respect and reverence for the presence of Christ in the Blessed Sacrament.
Yes.
Of course. So that means the way you transport it, and the way that you carry it, and the way you lay things out, and we'll go through that in a second. If the person cannot receive communion, offer a blessing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can do that. If they can't swallow, for example, or for whatever reason, they don't want to, and you don't have to probe too far. No, I don't want to receive communion today. Okay, well, let's talk, let's pray together. Then we'll end with a blessing. Number 8, follow the Catholic rite for communion to the sick, but adjust as needed.
Yes.
Yeah, we talked about that already. So, Mike has for you a little copy of the Communion of the Sick. And it has a nice, it's really nice because it's very straightforward. So it talks about the rite with the name of the Father, the sign of the cross, the greeting, the penitential act, where you can just pause and ask God, you think about sins and transgressions you made, and ask God for forgiveness. You could do Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy, but just as we do at every Mass, we just pause and ask God, as you reflect upon things that you have done, seeking God's mercy and forgiveness. And then that's followed by a liturgy of the Word, which can be a reading from the day. But this book also has, in the back part of it, a whole lot of optional readings. a lot to do with healing. So from the New Testament, from the Psalms, you can pull upon that, you have it with you. So if you didn't bring, and you could also pull up USCCB website, right on the main website, there's a nice little calendar. You click right on the date, and it'll pull up the readings for you, right on your phone or your iPad or whatever that you have. So you don't necessarily have to carry paper. You have a gospel reading of the day or a gospel reading from this book. A universal prayer, you can pray for the people of Puerto Rico and certainly of other parts of the world. You know, we pray to the Lord, Lord, hear our prayer. You can do that. You don't need to spend a lot of time. You can think about the things. It doesn't have to be a long list. It can be just a few. As we think about people beyond ourselves that are of need. Then you move right from there into the Lord's Prayer, to communion itself, and it will give you the words on the right here. Just follow those right along. Little silence, and then a closing prayer. A little prayer after communion and a final closing. So the resources are here for you, and just as that line said, and then you adjust based upon the needs of the person. And you may spend some time talking with them after that. You know, so what's the rest of your week look like? Should we get together again next Tuesday, 1 o'clock? My rule of thumb is if you can, if this is a regular person that you're visiting, that you always confirm the next visit before you leave. And they have your number, you have their number. So if something comes up, you call me, I call you. The other practice that I do, and I encourage our ministers to do, is to always call before you come, just to confirm. And the reason being, remember, they're the one that's sick or homebound. And then their caregiver may be helpful or may not be. And so even when I was visiting our fellow deacon for the last several weeks, I would call them and say, I'm on my way, okay? You know, it depends upon your relationship with them, but I see it as a common courtesy, but it also saves the embarrassment of showing up there and they say, oh, didn't somebody tell you that they're in the hospital, that they died? You know, and then, so it's always that kind of and it's just helpful to all parties involved. I have a few more. Number 9, question family members about their worthiness to receive communion. No, so just like we talked about in Mass, you know, just say, well, you were a card-carrying Catholic. Number 10, ask who pays for their care and then give them advice for saving money. No. But this last one is really important. Assure the sick, elderly person that their parish remembers them in prayer. That's a really big one. And, you know, taking, not only do we remember them in prayer, you're on our prayer list and all of that, and then we take our Sunday bulletin, and for those that we have a list of those that we're praying for, and it's not an exhaustive list, we have others we pray for too, but if their name is on it, they can see. You know, it isn't just your words, but they actually see that the community is praying for them. It also gives them the news. Any ways that we can keep them connected to the community is a really good thing. Okay, now, very simply, there are, and I wish we had more time because we'd actually demo this, but I'm going to do the best I can with what I got. And that is, there are some really basic tools for visiting. There is having a corporal or some sort of cloth, which could be a handkerchief. It doesn't need to be, you know, have a nice little red cross on it, but something that you lay down in order to put the pyx on. Okay, then you've got, you know, as we saw the picture, we have the pyx. You bend to whatever your arrangement here is to get hosts to take. And this I have a little case here, you may or may not, but you want to transport it in such a way that it is, I'll give you extreme examples, somewhere in my pocket or somewhere in my purse. That you need to know where it is and you carry it in an appropriate way. And the ideal is that you go from here to there, and not from here to Safeway, to this, to that. oh, I'll make it tomorrow, all of that. It really is. And I know sometimes it may not be from here to there. It may be that you've got to drop somebody off, or you got to pick somebody up. It's as direct a route as you possibly can. That's really the goal. And so coming in an ideal situation, greeting someone, having a little conversation, shall we pray, getting all set up with the pyx, with cross. Now, crucifix would be nice. This is a cross. I can tell you a story about I got this in Ireland, and it's a precious kind of marble, which it all is, but it's also kind of easy to carry. And then a candle. This is rather large compared to my cross, but a candle. Now, candles can be problematic, right? First of all, what is it? Why a candle? Light for light of Christ. Okay, it's the light of Christ. It's symbolic. It's one of our sacramentals, if you will, a sign of the sacred. So we have a candle at baptism, the baptismal candle, right? And then at the Easter Vigil, we light that tall candle that's there lit at every baptism, just where the baptismal candle is lit from. The resurrection, the light of Christ. It's also there at a funeral. So we enter into the light and we continue the light with God in eternal glory. So this candle is symbolic in so many ways. But it's also not an appropriate thing in some times in some places. If there's oxygen around, if it's in a facility where you have other people. It's one thing to have it in a home, and then you have to worry about whether, that will, the burning of it will infiltrate into the air and bother the very person you're trying to help. So my recommendation is always those little plastic, ones with the batteries in them are wonderful because it's the same symbolic appearance, even though it's not a quote-unquote real candle. But it's the symbolic appearance that what's important here. So I encourage you to have that instead, along with some spare batteries, because they go through batteries pretty quickly. So you're all set and ready to go. And then you can enter into your prayer service that we just described. Then you want to, it depends upon where you are, whether you can put some water in this and clear this and wipe it out, or whether you do that when you get home, which is perfectly fine. And then, you're not going to rush right out the door, but you also aren't going to sit there for an hour and talk about, the upcoming baseball playoffs or whatever you might be talking about. But in a very appropriate way. Well, thank you. It's been a joy being with you this week. I've got to head off to my next person I'm visiting, or I've got to go pick up my grandchild, or whatever you really need to do. And I'll see you next Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Let me know if something comes up, and I will with you. And it's been a joy. And thanks be to God. So, and then, I hope that when you get back to the car, you take 30 seconds just to thank God for the opportunity to be of service to this individual or in this facility. That's a real quick review of that. Questions on the process?
I just want to comment real quick. It's a common sense thing, but
Yeah.
if you go to somebody's home and they're coughing like crazy,
Yeah.
please do not give them communion. Even if they say, I'll be ready, there's a good chance as soon as you give them communion, they're going to start coughing again. So you can always do a spiritual communion. You can be very sympathetic. You can pray with them. You can offer to come back. But it's very serious. Don't give them communion if they're really coughing badly. If they're nauseous, you get there, they're coming out of the bathroom, they've just been throwing up all morning. Please don't give them communion. Be sympathetic, offer to do a spiritual communion, pray with them, offer to come back. But it's not a good idea to give somebody communion that has been throwing up, because they might just continue to throw up after you give it to them. And then, what was the last one? Oh, if you go into somebody's home and the person is asleep, and maybe their mouth is open, and the family member says, "Oh, you can give them communion." Please don't do that. Even if their mouth is open, and you will get pressured in some cultures. somebody who's asleep or unconscious, even though their mouth is open, just use your common sense. Thank you very much.
Oh, and common sense is a good thing. Let me highlight the rest of your handouts just so that you know what's there. And you could, I encourage you to go over them. There's a page entitled Pastoral Ministry to the Sick and Homebound. You know, when you go into facilities, you often have the need to check in with somebody. Each facility has different protocols. And so I would encourage you, if you're going to a nursing home or assisted living facility or whatever it may be, or a hospital, that you determine who it is or where it is you do check in, because they all have their own norms and protocols. But also, it's the nature of individuals in there that may be experiencing a number of these things. So it's an awareness of what you may encounter. Right below that, it talks about listening skills. The best thing you can do as a minister of the homebound is to just be present to another. And yes, engage in the rite and prayer and everything, but sometimes just listening. They're so grateful, for the most part, for you being there. And you could paraphrase with, without getting into parish gossip or things you may not know anything about. You can just say, thank you very much, and move on from there. If the individual is going through the process of dying, they're going through a lot of emotions. You're not a psychologist or a psychiatrist unless you are. So it's a matter of listening, and you may want to, if there's some real crisis going on there, to share that information with the pastor, then the priest or deacon, that they may want to follow up and be aware that this person is going through a crisis that may need some more assistance than you just coming and bringing communion. And then down at the bottom it talks about some rules of patient confidentiality, washing of your hands. One of the things I didn't bring with me, but I do take with me, is a little bottle of hand sanitizer. Always good to have handy. I wish I would have gone into a company that made all those years ago, but it's really a good thing to have in your little kit of things that you take for yourself and maybe for others that are there, but certainly for yourself. As you come out of the car, you're touching doorknobs, all kinds of stuff. That NPO or signs you'll see in hospitals when they cannot take any food. So you can go in and give a blessing. And the boundaries, what your role is there. You're not in dealing with problems with relatives and financial issues and all that other stuff. So just be aware that those things may come up, and you say, well, thanks, but I just, whatever words you use. The next page gives you a list of a number of things we've already talked about as minister of the homebound, and some of the materials that you need, some of the resources that you need. Following that page is an outline of the rite that's in that little blue book that you'll be receiving all the way through the introductions to the reading. So you have a lot of flexibility in the reading of the word in terms of what how much you read and then how much you talk about it. And then the communion part of it and the concluding prayer. Then following that is a whole list of do's and don'ts. We've covered a number of these already. If you're new to this ministry, I love the first bullet. As you begin ministry to the sick, ask your parish for a mentor, or if you can make visits with a more experienced minister to the sick. In other words, shadow someone. Go with someone if you haven't done this ministry before. Just be present and watch. And it serves two things. One, it sort of demystifies the whole process. But also, hopefully, it's somebody you could call as you begin to go out on your own and share with them, this happened when I went here and I didn't quite know how to do it, how to respond. And this is what I did. Do you think I did okay? To have that relationship with one other person who does the ministry you're doing that you can, talk about. There are a number of really good things here. Things to bring, your kit, things to say, listening, and so forth that we've hit on most. The don'ts at the bottom, Don't drop by a person's home unannounced, those sorts of things. That's common courtesy that's been used a couple of times. Don't offer medical advice. I had this doctor who told me, no, that's not being helpful in this role. Okay, so I think those are laid out. Then the last thing I want to share with you, I gave you an article that's really worth reading because, and this is for whether you're in homebound or not. It's the disposition you bring to this ministry, the attitudes that you bring to this ministry, the mindset of that you are of service, and it's not about you, it's about what you're doing and how valuable what you're doing is for the church and for the parish. I have a gift for you, and Mike's going to help me.
Yay!
And you can help me over here.
Yay!
To give a copy to each of you, and this is a prayer that we're going to say together. And it's a prayer that you can use if you're a minister to the sick, but if you aren't, it's still a darn good prayer.
When I showed Father Rory, there are 3 things. I trained at Seton, and many of us here did. Father Rory, the head of the pastoral care there, trained us. And the 3 things I remember he said so vividly still today. He goes, show up, shut up, it's not about you. And it still holds true.
It is. I'll be darned. Need more? Yeah, I have more. This is a prayer that you could use before you go out to visit someone. You could use it, but you could use it anytime you want to, really, because there's one thing is the formal visiting of the sick, but you could be visiting a friend, whether you're bringing communion or not, and you're ministering to them in your own way. So, everybody has a copy? So let us pray this together. Gracious God,
I am in your sacred presence, about to take the bread of life to those who are unable to participate in parish celebration and witnesses. Thank you for honoring their Christ. Bless my hands that they may be fitting instruments of the holy invitation. Bless my heart that I may prayerfully carry the bread of life to those who need. May my attitude, my reverence, and my concern for others be of your divine heart. I ask this in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, who lives with you in the Holy Spirit, now and forever. Amen.
so you can use that prayer in your own way before you go out and minister. Any questions before I close? Okay, so
Deacon.
I hope, yes.
During serving, do I have to turn off my cell phone?
That would be a good idea. I would put it on, you mean when you're out at the homes? I would put it on vibrate. Put it on, whatever silence mode that you have. So, and put it in a way that you can feel it if you're waiting for an emergency. If it's truly an emergency you're waiting for, explain to the person, I may get a call. Whatever, back to common sense again, whatever works for you. But our hope when you do this ministry, you're 100% present to them. And if you're waiting for a call out of this side of your mind, you're not 100% present for them. If you could put the phone, as I do, in my pants pocket in such a way that if it does vibrate, I know I've got something, but I don't have to answer it right away. In fact, I'm not going to answer it till I'm done. So that would be my recommendation.
Can I bring holy water?
Can you bring holy water? Yes, you may bring holy water. Sure. Yeah. It's not part of the rite, but if you want to use holy water to bless them, that's perfectly fine. Okay, and speaking of blessing, I would like to bless you. So please bow your heads for God's blessing. Dear friends, our brothers and sisters, you are entrusted with administering the Eucharist, with taking communion to the sick, and with giving it to those in need. In this ministry, you must be examples of Christian living in faith and conduct. You must strive to grow in holiness through this sacrament of unity and love. Remember that, though many, we are one body because we share the one cup and the one bread. As ministers of Holy Communion, be therefore especially observant of the Lord's command to love your neighbor. For when he gave his body as food to his disciples, he said to them, "This is my commandment, that you should love one another as I have loved you." And so we ask God to bless us, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you in your ministry.
Quick, just one question.
What?
How many minutes should a minister go to a home and do the ministry? About how many minutes? About 10, 15?
As long as it takes.
As long as it takes?
As long as it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Let me help one, Mike.
it depends. It depends on the time you have, and it depends upon the condition of the person. So, yep.
Okay.
It really, there isn't one really.
There's no standard.
No, I mean, if somebody like my friend who is recuperating from knee surgery, he's not sick other than that. So, I visited there as a half hour, 45 minutes. But if somebody is recovering from surgery, that's different. You don't want to be there, they get tired. So you have to be aware of that. Plus your time, how much time do you have? And, so you can be honest with them and say, I got about a half hour, and I've got to leave to pick up, blah, 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 and they'll understand.
Now, because of families, parents working 2 jobs and etc., and they can't attend Mass for some reason, would that be homebound ministry too?
No, because it is that's not homebound. That's like I got a crazy schedule, man. That's not being homebound. So, and with all the masses that are available on this area, you ought to be able to get the Mass. I mean, you work all day, every Saturday and Sunday. So, yeah. So there's masses at 7 o'clock in the morning, and there's Mass, the last Mass on Sunday, I think, is 6 o'clock at night. There's a church in Burlingame that has a 6 o'clock Sunday night Mass, so if you want to find one, you can find one.
Let's say, for example, you're going to homebound, and then the person that you're attending to, like you said, is unavailable, but yet you still have the host. What do you do?
Consume it, yeah.
Right away?
Yeah, and unless you're going to see somebody else, but otherwise, yeah, I would. There's no sense making a trip back to the parish and everything. You've taken it out, just consume it.
During communion in church now,
Yeah.
During the communion time, Mass, you see, usually there's 7 people, right? 7 EMs. But all of a sudden,
You're welcome. Thank you, sir. My pleasure.
then all of a sudden, only 3 people shows up.
Right.
So, is it appropriate for the priest to say, is there any more Eucharistic ministers? Or
Yeah, although
is that
I would hope the lay persons would see that you're there, for example, you're not on the schedule, but you're there, so I'm going to go ask you to help.
Right, and sometimes a lot of EMs who they would say, "Oh, I'm not in the schedule. I can't do it." You know what I mean? Is that a valid reason not to go up there when there's a need?
Well, that's up to them. I mean, it's always up to them. So we shouldn't judge why they don't want to do it, but my experience is when anybody's asked, unless they're not feeling well, they're going to do it.
So be active and be there no matter what, and pay attention, huh?
Yeah, I mean, you're being of service to other people. What a gift, So, yeah, if you can step up and help people out, why not?
Is there an expiration date in being a EM?
You're supposed to actually go to the workshop like this I think it's 3 years.
Yeah. 3 years.
Every 3 years?
Yeah.
That's a standard now, huh?
Yeah.
And
We used to go to
it's-
the pastoral school of pastoral.
Right, School of Pastoral Leadership.
Exactly.
Okay, and okay.
Year 2000.
Yes. Exactly.
Thank you, Deacon, for your time consideration. Okay, and I'll see you soon.
Some of
Those are great questions.
Name is Paul, and I'll see you
That's
soon.
how we learn.
I'm gonna post this up. in the YouTube. Of course, no pictures, just comments.
Okay.
Thank you, Father.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
What time did your son
you.
pick you up?
I know.